I taught my sociopathic friend how to fake emotions, so he learned to manipulate everyone. And then, he decided to destroy my life. I met Elliot when I was 14, and he was 12. My mom told me to go be friends with the weird kid down the road because she felt bad for him. As I walked over to his house to ask him to play for the first time, I was building up this image in my head. So by the time I knocked on his front door, I expected to be faced with a kid who was picking his own boogers and rubbing them all over himself, for him to pee all over me. But I was wrong. Very wrong, actually. Because out walked a normal 8-year-old boy who smiled a normal smile. So do you want to hang out? Together, you and me, yes! He cut me off with excitement, and I guess he noticed how taken aback I was from his reaction, because that's when his face immediately switched into a much more solemn expression. Hey, so did that seem happy to you? Do you think I did good? I just stared at him blankly, not knowing what in the world he was talking about. Oh, sorry, I don't really understand, feelings and stuff. So I've been practicing. I awkwardly laughed before trying to change topic and asking him what he liked to do for fun, and that's when he told me to follow him into his back garden. He pointed to the corner and showed me his bug orphanage. Dozens of jars filled with insects. Some had missing limbs, some upside down, some already dead. They're the ones nobody wanted, so I let them scream here instead, he announced proudly. And just before I could run out of the house screaming, he started tweaking out. Why are you so weirded out? Ugh, this is literally the coolest thing ever. Do you ever feel like nobody gets you? Back then, no one really knew about the concept of sociopaths or anything like that. You were either the same as everyone else, or different. And to me, it was very clear that he was different. And maybe it was my only child loneliness, or the fact I didn't grow up with a father. But either way, I decided to treat him as a little brother. We spent almost every day together after that. He'd relay to me how his day at school went. Meanwhile, I'd write everything down on a piece of paper and tell him how a normal person would react to everything he was telling me. After just a few weeks, he got really good at this, and we began to call it putting on the human mask. He had even managed to make friends outside of me. It all seemed so positive that I had no clue how much damage I was doing, until he turned 13 and found out about pranks. You see, there was one problem I was never able to give him real advice on, and that was his boredom. Elliot would beg me to tell him the secret, how everyone doesn't just unalive themselves since everything in life is clearly a distraction from death. I hated when he talked like this. How do you teach a sociopath how to enjoy something? At first, I tried to keep him entertained by letting him pretend to light me on fire, and I'd pretend to be super hurt. I should have known it was just a band-aid solution. I remember visiting him a few days after that and saw a spark in his eyes that I didn't recognize. Alex, guess what? His sudden happiness made me smile until he told me its source. Turns out, he had managed to cut a kid's heavy backpack as he was running for the bus, and he fell like a sack of meat. Elliot then burst out laughing like it was the funniest thing to ever exist. I told him it wasn't funny, expecting him to study my explanation like always. But instead, he just said, "Dude, I don't care anymore. This is the best I've felt in my entire life." He refused to listen any further, so I just shrugged it off. But then, every day for the next week, he was coming home with new stories, each worse than the last. And then came the breaking point. He told me he had put plastic shards in a kid's sandwich to see if anyone would notice, and because nobody did, he took a bite and started coughing until red came out. I got up to tell his mom, but then Elliot said if I told anyone, he would make my mom pay for my betrayal. So I just said okay before heading home. After that, I had every intention of cutting him off. But there was one thing I had forgotten to account for, and that was his mom. Because to her, her son had just lost his best friend for no reason. So one day, she showed up to my house and invited us to his talent show. And when the day came and we were sitting in the audience, I figured it'd just be a short singing solo, and then I'd never have to see his psychotic ever again. But I was wrong. Instead, he took a bird out of a box on the table. He then took a knife, cut it open, and let the red pour out onto the stage. The audience laughed thinking it was fake, but then he kept going. A second, then a third. By this point, one of the children in the audience was crying, and I myself felt bile begin to rise in my throat. I remember staring into Elliot's face, desperately searching for any sign of guilt, any sign that he had suddenly regretted what he had done. But instead, he was smiling ear to ear. That's when I heard the sirens outside. Turns out, a teacher had called the police during the performance. Mrs. Gonzalez, the music teacher, had slipped out of the auditorium as soon as she realized what was happening. The chaos that followed is still a blur in my memory. Screams from the audience as people finally realized what they were witnessing. Teachers rushing the stage. Elliot standing there with blood-soaked hands, still smiling as if he'd just performed a particularly impressive magic trick. The metallic smell of blood mixed with the scent of panic, sweat, and fear and confusion. The police took him away that night, but somehow, he was back at school the following week. His mother had convinced everyone it was an elaborate magic trick gone wrong, that the birds were already dead, that Elliot was just a misunderstood boy with a flair for the dramatic. She had tears in her eyes as she explained to the principal, the police, anyone who would listen, that her son would never hurt a living thing. I knew better. I had seen the bug orphanage. I had heard his stories. I had watched the light in his eyes as he described causing pain. That night after the talent show, I started keeping a journal of everything I knew about Elliot. Every incident, every disturbing comment, every red flag I'd ignored. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it, but it felt important to document it all. I wrote by flashlight late into the night, the words pouring out of me, page after page filled with tiny, cramped handwriting. Then the letters started coming. Small white envelopes with no return address, just my name scrawled in what looked like a child's handwriting, but wasn't. They would appear in our mailbox, sometimes slipped under our front door, once even tucked into my backpack at school. "I miss our talks," the first one said. "No one understands me like you do." The paper was cheap notebook paper, the kind with blue lines and holes punched along the side. The handwriting was careful, controlled, nothing like Elliot's usual messy scrawl. Then, "Why are you ignoring me? Don't you know that's rude?" This one came with a small drawing of a frowning face with X's for eyes. And finally, "If you don't want to be my friend anymore, someone else will have to pay." The threat was clear, made even more chilling by the casual way it was written, like he was commenting on the weather. 3 days after that last letter, I found all 4 tires on my mom's car slashed. The rubber was completely shredded, the metal rims sitting directly on the driveway. It must have happened overnight. I hadn't heard a thing. A small note was tucked under the windshield wiper. "Oops, E." I called the police immediately. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial the numbers. The phone felt slippery in my sweaty palm, and I had to redial twice before getting it right. 911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional. "My mom, she didn't come home from work. She's never late. Something's wrong." My voice cracked as I explained the situation. The words tumbled out in a rush, my breath coming in short gasps. "She was supposed to be home hours ago. Her car tires were slashed yesterday. I think someone might have hurt her." The dispatcher asked me a series of questions. How long had she been missing? Had she done this before? Was there any reason she might have gone somewhere else? With each question, the knot in my stomach tightened. This wasn't like her. Not at all. My mom was reliable to a fault. She always called if she was going to be even 5 minutes late. "We'll send an officer to take a report," the dispatcher finally said. "In the meantime, try calling her friends, other family members, anyone who might know where she is." I hung up and immediately called my Aunt Rebecca in the next town over. The phone rang 4 times before she picked up, her voice groggy with sleep. No, she hadn't heard from my mom. Then I called the few friends of hers whose numbers I had. Nothing. Each call increased my panic, my heart racing faster with each dead end. The waiting was unbearable. I paced our small living room, checking my phone every few seconds. The house felt too quiet, too empty. Every creak and groan of the old building made me jump. What if Elliot had done something to her? What if this was his revenge for me talking to the police about the slashed tires? 2 hours later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I lunged for it, nearly knocking over a lamp in my haste. "Hello?" I answered, my heart in my throat. "Is this Alex?" A man's voice, unfamiliar, deep, authoritative. "Yes, who is this?" "This is Officer Gonzalez. We found your mother's car on the side of Route 16, about 5 miles from the hospital. She was unconscious inside. She's been taken to Memorial Hospital." The world tilted sideways. The room spun around me, and I had to grab the back of the couch to steady myself. Is she okay?" "She's alive, but that's all I know right now. Do you have someone who can take you to the hospital?" I called my aunt again, and she drove over immediately. The 20-minute ride to the hospital felt like hours. My mind raced with terrible possibilities. What had happened to her? Was this Elliot's doing? The streetlights flashed by outside the car window, each one marking another second of uncertainty. At the hospital, a doctor met us in the waiting room. Her scrubs were wrinkled, her face tired but kind. "Your mother is stable," she said. "She appears to have suffered carbon monoxide poisoning. We're still running tests, but it looks like there was a leak in her car." "Carbon monoxide?" My aunt frowned, her forehead creasing with concern. "In her car?" The doctor nodded. "It can happen if there's a problem with the exhaust system. She's lucky someone spotted her car and called it in. Much longer and..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor seemed suddenly too bright, too harsh. They let us see her briefly. She was pale, with an oxygen mask covering her face, but her eyes fluttered open when I took her hand. The hospital room was cold, the beeping of monitors creating a steady rhythm in the background. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air. "Alex," she whispered, her voice muffled by the mask. "What happened?" "Your car," I said. "There was a gas leak or something." I squeezed her hand, trying to be reassuring despite the fear churning inside me. She closed her eyes again, too weak to stay awake. A nurse ushered us out, saying she needed rest. Her shoes squeaked on the polished floor as she led us back to the waiting area. In the hallway, I overheard Officer Gonzalez talking to another officer. They stood near the water fountain, their voices low but clear in the quiet corridor. "Definitely tampering," he was saying. "Someone cut the exhaust pipe and rerouted it into the cabin. This wasn't an accident." He gestured with his hands, demonstrating how it had been done. My blood ran cold. I knew instantly who was responsible. Elliot had made good on his threat. He'd tried to call my mom. The realization hit me like a physical blow, making my knees weak. But when I approached the officers and told them about Elliot, about his threats and his history, they looked skeptical. Officer Gonzalez's eyebrows rose higher with each detail I shared. "You're saying a 13-year-old boy sabotaged your mother's car?" Officer Gonzalez raised an eyebrow. "That's a serious accusation." His partner shifted uncomfortably, exchanging a glance with him. "He's dangerous," I insisted. "He's hurt people before. He called birds on stage at a talent show. I'm aware of that incident," the officer interrupted. "But that doesn't mean he's capable of something like this. We'll investigate all possibilities, but right now, we have no evidence pointing to anyone specific." His tone was dismissive, the way adults often talk to teenagers they think are being dramatic. I wanted to scream in frustration. Why wouldn't anyone believe me? The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor buzzed overhead, adding to my growing headache. My aunt took me home that night. She stayed over, sleeping on our couch. I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, jumping at every sound. The house creaked and settled around me, each noise a potential threat. Was Elliot out there, watching our house, planning his next move? The moonlight cast strange shadows on my wall, shapes that seemed to move and shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. The next morning, I checked my email. There it was, from an unfamiliar address. "How's your mom? I heard she had an accident. So sad. Hope she gets better soon. E." I printed it out and added it to my growing folder of evidence. The threatening letters, photos of the slashed tires, screenshots of strange messages from fake accounts, evidence that no one seemed to take seriously. The folder was getting thick now, bulging with papers, a physical record of Elliot's escalating behavior. My aunt drove me to school, despite my protests that I needed to stay home. "Your mom would want you to keep up with your classes," she insisted. "I'll pick you up right after." Her car smelled of vanilla air freshener, a scent that usually comforted me, but now just made my stomach churn. School was a nightmare. Everyone was talking about my mom's accident. Some people gave me sympathetic looks, others whispered as I passed. I felt like I was underwater, everything muffled and distant. The fluorescent lights in the hallway seemed too bright, the lockers too loud as they slammed shut, the chatter of students too chaotic. During lunch, Virginia Chen approached my table. She sat down across from me, her expression concerned. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, her clothes perfectly pressed as always. "I heard about your mom," she said. "I'm really sorry." She fidgeted with her water bottle, twisting the cap on and off. I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The cafeteria was loud around us, the clatter of trays and hundreds of conversations creating a wall of noise. "Look, I wanted to tell you something." She glanced around, then leaned closer. "Elliot's been saying weird things. About you, about your mom." My head snapped up. "What things?" "He said it was karma, that you deserved what happened because you betrayed him." She bit her lip. "I thought he was just being dramatic, but then your mom actually got hurt and, I don't know, it freaked me out." Her voice dropped to a whisper on the last words. Finally, someone else was seeing through Elliot's mask. "He did it," I said quietly. "He sabotaged her car." Virginia's eyes widened. "You can't know that." She leaned back slightly, as if wanting to distance herself from my accusation. "I do know it. He threatened to hurt her before, and now he's bragging about it to you?" I leaned forward. "Virginia, he's dangerous. You need to stay away from him." The urgency in my voice must have startled her. She stood up abruptly. "I shouldn't have said anything. Just be careful, okay?" She hurried away, leaving me alone again. Her half-eaten lunch remained on the table, abandoned in her haste to get away. After school, I went straight to the hospital with my aunt. My mom was looking better, some color back in her cheeks. The oxygen mask had been replaced with a nasal cannula, and she was sitting up in bed, picking at a tray of hospital food. The doctors said she could come home in a day or two, but she'd need to take it easy. "No work for at least a week," the doctor instructed, making notes on her chart. "And follow up with your primary care physician in 10 days. The police were here," she told me after the doctor left. "They said someone tampered with my car." Her voice was still raspy, her eyes tired but alert. I took a deep breath. "It was Elliot, Mom. I know it was." The words came out in a rush, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. She sighed. "Alex, no, listen to me. He sent me an email this morning, asking about your accident. How would he even know about it unless he was responsible?" I pulled out my phone, ready to show her the email. My mom frowned. "It's probably all over the local news by now." She adjusted her position in the bed, wincing slightly. "He's been threatening us for weeks. The letters, the slashed tires, and now this? When are you going to believe me?" My voice rose, drawing a concerned glance from a nurse passing by the open door. "I believe that you believe it," she said carefully. "But Elliot is just a child, Alex. A troubled one, yes, but still a child. What you're suggesting would take planning, technical knowledge. He's not just a child," I interrupted. "He's something else. Something wrong." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across her face. My mom reached for my hand. "I know you've been through a lot, but I need you to consider that maybe, just maybe, you're focusing on Elliot because it's easier than accepting that bad things sometimes just happen." Her hand was warm in mine, her expression gentle but firm. I pulled my hand away. She still didn't believe me. No one did. The frustration built inside me like a physical pressure, making it hard to breathe. When my mom came home from the hospital, I became her shadow. I refused to leave her alone, convinced Elliot would try again. I slept on her bedroom floor, jumped at every noise, checked the locks a dozen times a night. Every creak of the house, every car that drove by too slowly, every unexpected phone call sent my heart racing. After 3 days of this, she sat me down. The bags under her eyes had deepened, her face drawn with fatigue, not just from her recovery, but from my constant vigilance. "This has to stop, Alex. You're making yourself sick with worry." She gestured to the baseball bat I'd taken to carrying around the house, the extra locks I'd installed on the windows. "I'm trying to protect you," I insisted. The afternoon sun streamed through the living room windows, dust motes dancing in the golden light. "I know, honey, but this isn't healthy, for either of us." She took my hands. "I've been thinking, maybe we need a fresh start, away from here." Her voice was gentle but determined. I stared at her. "You mean, move?" The possibility hadn't even occurred to me. She nodded. "I've applied for a transfer to the hospital in Riverdale. It's only an hour away, but it would be a new school for you, a new neighborhood for us. a chance to put all this behind us. She squeezed my hands, her eyes hopeful. Relief washed through me. Moving away from Elliot was exactly what we needed. A place where he couldn't find us, couldn't hurt us. When? If the transfer goes through, we could move before the next school year starts. About 2 months. She smiled, clearly relieved by my positive reaction. 2 months. We just had to survive 2 more months. I could do that. I would be extra vigilant, extra careful. We would make it. But Elliot wasn't done with us yet. The next day at school, I was called to the principal's office. My stomach dropped as I walked the long hallway to the administrative wing, past bulletin boards covered with colorful announcements and student artwork. Mr. Sanchez was waiting for me, his expression grave. He gestured for me to sit in one of the hard plastic chairs across from his desk. The office smelled of coffee and the faint scent of the pine-scented cleaner the janitors used. Alex, we need to talk about your academic record. He folded his hands on his desk, his gold wedding band catching the light. I frowned. What about it? It appears there are some discrepancies. He slid a folder across his desk. Your midterm exam in history. The answers match Heather Wilson's exactly, even the incorrect ones. His voice was stern, his expression disappointed. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. I didn't cheat. The air conditioning hummed loudly in the quiet office, a clock on the wall ticking away the seconds. The evidence suggests otherwise. He opened the folder, showing me the 2 exams side by side. They were identical. Every answer, every essay response, even the way certain questions were skipped, all the same. This isn't my handwriting, I said, panic rising. Someone must have switched my exam. I pointed to the signature at the top. Look, that's not how I write my name. The letters were similar, but slightly off. A forgery, but a good one. Mr. Sanchez sighed. Alex, I understand you've been under a lot of stress lately, with your mother's accident and everything else, but cheating is a serious offense. He closed the folder with a finality that made my heart sink. I didn't cheat, I repeated, more forcefully. Someone is setting me up. The words sounded hollow, even to my own ears. Who would believe such a far-fetched excuse? Do you have any proof of that? Of course I didn't. Just like I had no proof Elliot had sabotaged my mom's car, or slashed our tires, or sent those threatening messages from fake accounts. The frustration was like a physical weight on my chest. I'm going to have to give you a 0 on the exam, Mr. Sanchez continued, and you'll serve detention for the next week. Consider yourself lucky I'm not recommending suspension. His tone made it clear the discussion was over. I walked out of his office in a daze. Elliot was systematically destroying my life, piece by piece. My reputation, my friendships, my sense of safety, all gone. And now my academic record too. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly before me, the lockers lining the walls like silent witnesses to my humiliation. As I headed to my next class, I spotted Sean Miller at his locker. Sean had transferred to our school mid-year and kept mostly to himself. Rumors said he'd had some kind of trouble at his old school. On impulse, I approached him. Maybe he'd understand what it was like to be an outsider, to have people whispering about you. Sean, I need your help. The words came out before I could think better of them. He looked around nervously, his eyes darting up and down the hallway. With what? He was shorter than me, with sandy hair and a perpetual worried expression. Elliot, he's still after me. He hurt my mom, and now he's framing me for cheating. No one believes me, but I know it's him. The words tumbled out in a rush, my voice low but urgent. Sean closed his locker. What do you expect me to do about it? But there was something in his expression, a flicker of recognition, perhaps even fear. Talk to me. Tell me everything you know about him. Maybe together we can figure out a way to stop him. I was grasping at straws, but I had no one else to turn to. He hesitated, then nodded. Not here. Meet me at the public library after school. 4 o'clock. He hurried away before I could say anything else, disappearing into the crowd of students changing classes. I spent the rest of the day in a fog, barely hearing my teachers, jumping every time someone walked past me in the hall. Was Elliot watching me right now? Did he know I was planning to meet with Sean? Every face in the crowded hallways seemed suspicious, every glance potentially hostile. After school, I told my aunt I had a study group at the library. She dropped me off, promising to pick me up at 5:30. The library was quiet and cool, a welcome relief from the noise and tension of school. The smell of books and the soft hush of pages turning created a sense of calm I hadn't felt in weeks. Sean was already there, sitting at a table in the back corner of the reference section. He looked nervous, constantly glancing around. His leg bounced under the table, a nervous tick he seemed unaware of. Thanks for coming, I said, sliding into the chair across from him. The wooden chair creaked slightly under my weight. I probably shouldn't be here, he muttered. If Elliot finds out. He left the threat unspoken, but his fear was palpable. He won't, I assured him, though I wasn't certain of that at all. Tell me everything you know about him. When did you first meet him? I leaned forward, keeping my voice low. Sean took a deep breath. 5th grade. He transferred to our school mid-year. At first he seemed normal, quiet, kept to himself, but then weird things started happening. Kids' stuff would go missing. Someone put thumbtacks on the teacher's chair. Little things, you know? He traced a pattern on the wooden table with his finger, avoiding my eyes. I nodded. And you think it was Elliot? I know it was. I caught him once, going through another kid's backpack. When I confronted him, he just smiled and said he was collecting secrets. Then he told me if I said anything, he'd tell everyone about the bedwetting thing. Sean's voice dropped even lower on the last words. What bedwetting thing? The library's air conditioning hummed softly in the background. a clock on the wall ticking away the minutes. Sean's face reddened. Exactly. There was no bedwetting thing, but he said he'd make everyone believe it anyway, so I kept quiet. He picked at a loose thread on his shirt sleeve, his discomfort obvious. And then he poisoned you? I remembered the rumors about Sean's transfer, that he'd been hospitalized for some mysterious illness. Sean nodded. It was after I saw him hurting a cat behind the school. He had it pinned down and was doing things to it. I told him I was going to tell a teacher. The next day, I drank from my water bottle during lunch, and my throat started burning. The doctors said it was a small amount of drain cleaner, not enough to coal me, but enough to put me in the hospital. His voice was flat, emotionless, as if he'd disconnected himself from the memory. My stomach churned. Did you tell anyone it was him? A librarian walked past our table, pushing a cart of books, the wheels squeaking slightly on the carpet. I tried, but there was no proof, and he threatened my little sister, said he knew which bus she took home from her elementary school. Sean's voice cracked. My parents transferred me to another school after that. I thought I was done with him. Then I heard he'd transferred to Westlake, and I got scared. He wrapped his arms around himself, as if suddenly cold. You're not the only one, I said quietly. There was a kid at our school too. Elliot put plastic in his sandwich. He coughed up blood. The memory of Elliot's excited description made me feel sick all over again. Sean's eyes widened. Do you know where that kid is now? Maybe if we both came forward? Hope flickered in his expression for the first time. I don't, I admitted. He left school after that. I don't even know his name. Another dead end. The frustration was becoming familiar, a constant companion. We spent the next hour comparing notes on Elliot, his patterns, his threats, his methods. It was chilling how similar our experiences were. The way he isolated his targets, how he always had an alibi, how he seemed to know exactly what would hurt each person the most. We need more, Sean said finally. More people, more evidence. There have to be others he's hurt. He drummed his fingers on the table, thinking. I considered this. There might be. At the talent show, when he culled those birds, a teacher called the police. She must have suspected something was wrong with him before that. The memory of that night was still vivid. The blood, the screams, the sirens. Do you know which teacher? Sean leaned forward, suddenly energized. I shook my head, but I could find out. The pieces were starting to come together. If we could gather enough testimonies, enough evidence, maybe someone would finally believe us. We agreed to meet again in 2 days. In the meantime, Sean would try to find the sandwich kid, and I would try to identify the teacher who called the police. We parted ways, each with a task, a purpose. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. As I was leaving the library, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Making new friends, Alex? Sean seems nice. Wonder if he has any pets. My blood ran cold. He knew. Somehow, Elliot knew we'd met. The busy street outside the library suddenly seemed full of potential threats. Every passing car, every stranger on the sidewalk could be watching me, reporting back to Elliot. I quickly called Sean, but there was no answer. The call went straight to voicemail. Had Elliot already gotten to him? The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot as I waited for my aunt to pick me up. That night, I could barely sleep. I kept imagining Elliot hurting Sean, or his little sister, or my mom again. The darkness of my bedroom seemed to press in on me, full of unseen threats. When I finally did drift off, I had nightmares about birds with their wings cut off, screaming in silent jars. I woke up gasping, sheets tangled around me, sweat soaking my pajamas despite the cool night air. The next morning, Sean wasn't at school. I tried calling him again, but still no answer. By lunchtime, I was frantic. Had Elliot done something to him? The cafeteria was loud and chaotic as usual, but I couldn't focus on anything except Sean's empty seat across the room. Then, just as I was considering skipping my afternoon classes to go to Sean's house, he texted me. I'm okay. Family emergency. Sister got sick last night. Talk later. The message appeared on my phone screen. The blue text bubble a welcome sight. Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by suspicion. Was this really from Sean? Or had Elliot gotten his phone? I texted back, "What's your sister's name?" My fingers hovered over the screen, waiting for the response. The response came quickly. Mia. Why? I relaxed slightly. If Elliot had Sean's phone, he probably wouldn't know his sister's name. But still, the coincidence was troubling. Sean's sister getting sick right after Elliot's threatening text. After school, I went to the counseling office. Ms. Harper, the school counselor, had been at the talent show. She might know which teacher called the police. Her office was small but cozy, with plants on the windowsill and inspirational posters on the walls. Alex, she greeted me warmly. How are you holding up? I heard about your mother's accident. She gestured for me to sit in the comfortable chair across from her desk. I'm okay, I lied. Actually, I wanted to ask you something about the talent show. The one where Elliot, I couldn't bring myself to finish the sentence. The memory was still too vivid, too disturbing. Her expression turned serious. What about it? She leaned forward slightly, her brow furrowed with concern. Do you know which teacher called the police? I tried to keep my voice casual, as if this was just idle curiosity. She frowned. Why do you want to know that? Her eyes studied my face, searching for the real reason behind my question. I hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. I'm trying to understand what happened with Elliot. He was my friend, and I never saw the signs. I looked down at my hands, avoiding her perceptive gaze. Ms. Harper's face softened. It's not your fault, Alex. Sometimes people hide their true selves very well. She paused. It was Mrs. Gonzalez, the music teacher. She'd had concerns about Elliot for some time, apparently. She said this cautiously, as if unsure how much to reveal. Mrs. Gonzalez, of course. She would have been involved in planning the talent show. Thank you, I said, standing up. That helps. The chair creaked as I rose, the sound loud in the quiet office. Alex, Ms. Harper called as I reached the door. If you ever need to talk about what happened, my door is always open. Her expression was sincere, concerned. I nodded and left. I needed to find Mrs. Gonzalez. The hallways were emptying as the school day ended, just a few students lingering at their lockers or waiting for rides. The music room was empty when I got there, but as I turned to leave, Mrs. Gonzalez walked in, carrying a stack of sheet music. She was a small woman with graying hair pulled back in a bun, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. Alex, she said, surprised. Can I help you with something? She set down the music on the piano, the pages making a soft, rustling sound. I need to talk to you. About Elliot. I closed the door behind me, not wanting to be overheard. She set down the music and gestured for me to sit. What about him? Her expression was guarded, cautious. You called the police at the talent show, I said. You must have suspected something was wrong with him before that. The music room smelled of wood polish and paper, the afternoon sun streaming through the high windows. Mrs. Gonzalez sighed. I did. There were incidents. Nothing I could prove, but enough to worry me. She removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose tiredly. What kind of incidents? I leaned forward, eager for any information that could help. She hesitated. I probably shouldn't be discussing this with you. She glanced at the closed door, as if worried someone might be listening. Please, I urged. It's important. He's still hurting people. The desperation in my voice must have convinced her. That caught her attention. What do you mean? Her eyes narrowed, suddenly alert. So I told her about the threats, the sabotage of my mom's car, the framing me for cheating, about Sean and the drain cleaner, about the sandwich kid. The words poured out of me, a flood of fear and frustration that I'd been holding back for too long. When I finished, Mrs. Gonzalez looked pale. I had no idea it had gone this far. She shook her head slowly, her expression troubled. No one believes me, I said, my voice cracking. They think I'm paranoid or obsessed, but I'm not. He's dangerous, and he's getting worse. The afternoon light was fading now, shadows lengthening across the music room floor. She was quiet for a long moment. There was a student last year, Willie Chen. Elliot was partnered with him for a music project. Willie was a gifted pianist, headed for Juilliard someday. Then there was an accident. His hand was crushed in a door. He said Elliot did it, but there were no witnesses. Willie's family moved away after that. Her voice was low, as if she was afraid of being overheard. My stomach dropped. Do you know where they went? Another victim, another piece of the puzzle. She shook her head. No, but I might be able to find out. She studied me. What are you planning to do with this information, Alex? Her expression was concerned, but also calculating. I'm gathering evidence, testimonies from everyone Elliot has hurt. If enough people come forward, maybe someone will finally believe us. The plan sounded more solid when I said it aloud, more possible. Mrs. Gonzalez nodded slowly. I'll see what I can find out about Willie, but be careful, Alex. Very careful. The warning in her voice was clear. That night, I added Mrs. Gonzalez's information to my growing file on Elliot. I now had 3 confirmed victims besides myself: Sean, the sandwich kid, and Willie Chen, plus my mom, though I still couldn't prove Elliot was behind her accident. The file was thick now, bulging with papers, a physical record of Elliot's escalating behavior. The next day, Sean and I met again at the library. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were rumpled, as if he'd slept in them. My sister really was sick, he explained. But I think someone might have put something in her juice box. She had the same symptoms I did when Elliot poisoned me. Not as severe, but similar. He spoke quietly, glancing around the library, as if expecting Elliot to appear from behind a bookshelf. My blood ran cold. Did you take her to the hospital? The thought of Elliot targeting a little girl made me feel physically ill. He nodded. They said it was probably just a stomach bug, but he trailed off, his implication clear. The fluorescent lights of the library buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across his worried face. This has to stop, I said firmly. We need to go public with what we know. The frustration and fear had hardened into determination. Enough was enough. How? No one believes us individually. Why would they believe us together? Sean's voice was skeptical, but there was a hint of hope there too. I considered this. What if we create a blog? Anonymous, but detailed. We share our stories, gather others, create a record that can't be ignored. The idea had been forming in my mind since our last meeting. Sean looked skeptical. You think that will work? He picked at a hangnail, his doubt evident. I don't know, but we have to try something. I was tired of being afraid, tired of being dismissed. It was time to fight back. We spent the next hour setting up a blog called The Truth About E. We wrote our stories in detail, being careful not to include our names or any identifying information. We added a contact form for others to share their experiences. The library's computers were old and slow, but they served our purpose. Now we need to spread the word, I said, but carefully. If Elliot finds out too soon, I didn't need to finish the thought. We both knew the risks. I know some people who might have had run-ins with him, Sean said. I'll reach out discreetly. He seemed more energized now, more hopeful. Over the next week, we added more content to the blog. Mrs. Gonzalez came through with Willie Chen's contact information. I called him, and after some hesitation, he agreed to share his story anonymously. The phone call was difficult. Willie was still traumatized, his voice shaking as he described what had happened. He told me he wanted to hear what bones sounded like when they broke, Willie said. his voice hollow, right before he slammed the door on my hand. I'll never play piano the same way again. The pain in his voice was palpable, even through the phone. The blog started getting attention. Comments appeared from other kids who'd had encounters with Elliot. Small things mostly. Stolen items, mysterious accidents, strange threats. But together, they painted a disturbing picture. A pattern emerged. Elliot would befriend someone, learn their vulnerabilities, then exploit them. The more we learned, the clearer it became that this was no ordinary troubled teen. Then one day, I opened my locker to find a note inside. I see what you're doing. It won't work. No one will believe you. They'll just think you're crazy. Stop now, or I'll give them a reason to lock you up. The handwriting was the same as the previous notes. Careful, controlled, nothing like Elliot's usual messy scrawl. I added the note to my file and kept going. The blog was gaining traction. People were starting to talk, but Elliot wasn't backing down. The next day, my backpack went missing during gym class. The locker room was chaotic as usual. Boys shoving each other and snapping towels, the air thick with the smell of sweat and deodorant. When it was found in the boys' bathroom, it contained a knife and a list of student names with the word "Cull" written across the top. The knife was a hunting knife, the kind with a serrated edge and a black handle. The list included 10 names, written in what looked like my handwriting, but wasn't. I was called to the principal's office immediately. Mr. Sanchez looked grim. "Alex, do you have any explanation for this?" He gestured to the knife and list, now sealed in evidence bags. The fluorescent lights of his office seemed harsher than usual, highlighting the deep frown lines on his face. "It's not mine," I said, my voice shaking. "Someone planted it in my bag. It was Elliot. He's trying to frame me." The words sounded hollow even to my own ears. Who would believe such a far-fetched excuse? Mr. Sanchez sighed. "Elliot Martinez doesn't even attend this school anymore." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with a mixture of concern and suspicion. "He's still in the area. He's been threatening me for weeks." I was desperate for him to believe me, to see the truth. "Do you have any proof of these threats?" His eyebrows raised skeptically. I hesitated. Should I tell him about the blog, about the file of evidence I'd been collecting? But what if that just made me look more obsessed? "I need to call my mom," I said finally. The walls of the office seemed to be closing in on me. They suspended me pending an investigation. My mom had to leave work to pick me up. In the car, she was silent for a long time. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the occasional swish of the windshield wipers clearing the light rain that had started to fall. "I believe you," she said finally. "About Elliot. About all of it." She kept her eyes on the road, but her knuckles were white where she gripped the steering wheel. I turned to her, shocked. "You do?" After weeks of dismissal, of being told I was overreacting or paranoid, her words were like a lifeline. She nodded. "I found your folder. The letters, the emails, the photos. And I've been reading that blog. There are too many stories, too many similarities. It can't all be coincidence." She glanced at me briefly, her expression resolute. Relief washed over me. Finally, someone believed me. "What do we do now?" The rain was falling harder now, drumming on the roof of the car. "We fight back," she said firmly. "We take all your evidence to the police. Not just the local officers but the county detective division. Someone will listen." Her determination gave me hope, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. But when we got home, we found our front door standing open. Inside, the house had been ransacked, drawers pulled out and emptied onto the floor, furniture overturned, pictures smashed. My room was the worst. Drawers emptied, mattress slashed, clothes strewn everywhere, and my folder of evidence was gone. The hiding place under my mattress had been discovered, the contents scattered and then taken. "No," I whispered, dropping to my knees beside my bed. "No, no, no." The rain from outside had blown in through an open window, soaking the carpet where I knelt. My mom called the police, but I knew it was too late. Elliot had taken everything, all my physical evidence, gone. But he'd made a mistake. He didn't know about the blog. He didn't know I'd scanned most of the letters and emails and uploaded them as backup. The digital copies were safe, beyond his reach. While my mom dealt with the police, I called Sean. Elliot broke into my house. He took all my evidence. My voice was shaking, but there was anger there too now, not just fear. "Are you okay?" Sean sounded panicked. "What about your mom?" The concern in his voice was genuine. "We're fine. We weren't home, but he knows, Sean. He knows what we're doing." I paced the length of our living room, stepping over broken picture frames and scattered books. "We should stop," Sean said immediately. "It's too dangerous." His voice cracked with fear. "No," I said firmly. "We can't stop now. That's what he wants. We still have the blog. We still have all those testimonies. We can still expose him." The determination in my voice surprised even me. There was a long silence. "I don't know, Alex. My sister." He left the threat unspoken, but I understood his fear. "I understand if you want out," I said, "but I'm going to keep going. I wouldn't blame him for protecting his family." After a moment, Sean sighed. "I'm with you, but we need to be even more careful now." His courage bolstered my own. The next day, I was called back to the principal's office. Mr. Sanchez looked troubled. "The police have reviewed the security footage from the gym area," he said. "It shows someone placing the knife and list in your backpack while you were in class. The footage isn't clear enough to identify the person, but it clearly wasn't you." He seemed genuinely relieved to be able to give me this news. Relief flooded through me. So my suspension is lifted? A small victory, but an important one. He nodded. Yes, and I owe you an apology, Alex. It seems you were telling the truth about being framed. The admission clearly cost him some pride, but his expression was sincere. It was a small victory, but an important one. For the first time, there was actual evidence that someone was targeting me. The rain had stopped, and sunlight streamed through the windows of Mr. Sanchez's office, a physical manifestation of the hope I was beginning to feel. When I got home that afternoon, my mom was waiting with news of her own. I spoke with Detective Williams at the county office, she said. He's agreed to look at the blog and the copies of the evidence we still have. He's taking this seriously, Alex. She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in weeks. Hope sparked in my chest. Maybe finally, someone with authority would believe us. We spent the evening cleaning up the mess from the break-in, putting our home back in order. It felt good to be taking action, to be fighting back in some small way, but Elliot wasn't done yet. That night, as my mom and I were eating dinner, the doorbell rang. The sound made us both jump, exchanging worried glances across the table. It was Mrs. Martinez, Elliot's mother, and she wasn't alone. A man in a suit stood beside her. She looked immaculate as always, her hair perfectly styled, her clothes expensive and well-tailored. The man beside her was tall and imposing, his expression stern. "This is Mr. Axel," she said coldly, "my attorney. We're here to serve you with a cease and desist order regarding the defamatory blog you've created about my son." She thrust a thick envelope toward my mom, her eyes hard. My mom took the papers, her face hardening. "My son is telling the truth." She stood her ground, refusing to be intimidated. "Your son is obsessed with mine," Mrs. Martinez snapped. "He's been harassing Elliot for months, making up lies, spreading rumors. It stops now, or we'll sue you for everything you have." The threat hung in the air between them, the tension palpable. After they left, my mom called Detective Williams. He advised us to temporarily take down the blog while he investigated. "We don't want to give them ammunition for a lawsuit," he explained. "Let me do my job first." His voice was reassuring, professional. Reluctantly, I agreed. We took down the blog, but kept all the content saved. Sean was relieved. He'd been getting increasingly nervous about his family's safety. For the next week, things were quiet. Too quiet. No messages from Elliot, no accidents, no threats. It made me more anxious, not less. What was he planning? Then, on Friday afternoon, Detective Williams called my mom. "I need to speak with both of you," he said, "in person. Can you come to the station tomorrow morning?" His tone gave nothing away. That night, I barely slept. Was this good news or bad? Had the detective found evidence against Elliot, or had he decided we were making it all up? The possibilities swirled in my mind, keeping me awake long into the night. The next morning, my mom and I sat across from Detective Williams in a small interview room. He had a thick folder in front of him. The police station was quiet on a Saturday morning, the interview room sterile and impersonal. "I've been investigating your claims about Elliot Martinez," he began. "I've interviewed several of the individuals who shared their stories on your blog. I've reviewed medical records, school incident reports, and the evidence from your home break-in." He spoke methodically, his expression serious, but not unkind. He paused, his expression serious. "What I've found is disturbing. There's a clear pattern of escalating behavior. The incidents with insects, then small animals, then targeting peers. It's consistent with what we know about the development of antisocial personality disorder." He opened the folder, showing us pages of notes, photographs, and official reports. My mom leaned forward. "So, you believe us?" Her voice was steady, but I could hear the hope in it. "I do," he said firmly, "and I'm not the only one. The district attorney is reviewing the case. There's talk of a psychiatric evaluation for Elliot, possibly removal from his home environment." He closed the folder, his expression resolute. Relief washed over me. Finally, someone was taking action. "What happens now?" I asked. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for months seemed to lighten slightly. "For now, we need you to stay away from Elliot. No contact whatsoever. We're building a case, but it takes time. In the meantime, we'll have patrols in your neighborhood, and I want you to call immediately if there's any attempt at contact." He handed us his card, with his direct line written on the back. As we left the station, I felt lighter than I had in months. Elliot was finally going to face consequences for what he'd done. The sky was clear, the sun warm on my face as we walked to the car, but I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. That night, as my mom and I were watching a movie, the power went out. The whole house plunged into darkness. The sudden silence was jarring. No hum of the refrigerator, no whir of the air conditioning, just complete stillness. "Must be the storm," my mom said, reaching for her phone to use as a flashlight. A thunderstorm had been forecasted, though the sky had been clear earlier. I wasn't so sure. The weather had been clear all day. Then I smelled it. Smoke. Acrid and unmistakable, it drifted through the house, growing stronger by the second. "Mom," I said urgently, "I think the house is on fire." My heart raced as the smell intensified. We rushed to the kitchen, where orange flames were already licking up the wall near the back door. The smoke detector hadn't gone off. Someone had disabled it. The heat was intense, the flames casting eerie, dancing shadows across the room. "Call 911!" my mom shouted, grabbing the fire extinguisher. She aimed it at the base of the flames, but the fire was spreading too quickly, consuming the curtains, the cabinets, the ceiling. But the fire was spreading too quickly. Within minutes, it was clear we couldn't fight it ourselves. We ran outside, joining neighbors who had already gathered on the street. The night air was cool against my skin, a stark contrast to the heat of the burning house. Someone had called the fire department, and we could hear sirens in the distance. We stood on the lawn, watching helplessly as flames consumed our home. The heat was intense even from a distance, the crackling of the fire audible over the murmurs of the gathered crowd. As I watched our home burn, I felt a presence beside me. I turned to find Elliot standing there, his face illuminated by the flames. He looked different somehow, taller, more confident, his eyes reflecting the orange glow of the fire. "Oops," he said softly, so only I could hear. "Looks like you forgot to check your wiring. So dangerous." His smile was small but unmistakable, a predator savoring his kill. Before I could respond, he melted back into the crowd. I tried to follow, to grab him, to make him confess, but he was gone, disappeared into the darkness beyond the circle of firelight. The fire department arrived and managed to save part of the house, but the kitchen and back rooms were destroyed. The fire marshal confirmed it was arson. Someone had poured accelerant along the back wall and ignited it. The evidence was clear, but there were no witnesses, no fingerprints, nothing to tie it to Elliot. We stayed with my aunt that night. I told Detective Williams about seeing Elliot at the fire, about what he'd said to me. "We'll bring him in for questioning," the detective promised. "This may be the evidence we need." His voice was grim, but determined. The next day, Elliot was taken to the police station. His mother went with him, along with their lawyer. Hours passed with no news. Finally, Detective Williams called. The frustration in his voice was evident even through the phone. "We had to release him," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "He has an alibi for the time of the fire. His mother and 3 neighbors all swear he was at home, having a barbecue in their backyard." He sighed heavily. "We're still investigating, but without evidence to contradict their statements." "He's lying," I said. "They're all lying. I saw him there." My voice rose in frustration, my free hand clenching into a fist. "I believe you," the detective said, "but without evidence, their word against yours isn't enough for an arrest." The legal system's limitations had never felt more frustrating. I felt defeated. Even with everything we'd gathered, Elliot was still untouchable. The next day at school was a blur. I moved through the hallways in a daze, barely hearing my teachers, jumping at every unexpected sound. The weight of hopelessness pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. But then, unexpectedly, we got a break. A video appeared online. It showed Elliot approaching my backpack in the school gym, clearly placing something inside. The footage was much clearer than what the school security cameras had captured. You could see his face, his distinctive walk, the careful way he unzipped my bag and placed the knife inside. "Someone must have been recording with their phone," my mom said, watching the video in amazement. We huddled around her laptop at my aunt's house, the video playing on repeat, as we tried to process this unexpected turn of events. The video went viral in our community. Suddenly, people were talking. The stories from the blog were being shared again. Parents were asking questions. The school board called an emergency meeting. The tide was turning, public opinion shifting as evidence mounted. And then, another video surfaced. This one showed Elliot sneaking out of his house the night of the fire, returning an hour later smelling of smoke. The night vision footage was grainy, but unmistakable. Elliot leaving through his bedroom window, dressed in dark clothes, carrying what looked like a gas can. The videos had been anonymously uploaded, but I had a suspicion who was behind them. When I checked my email, I found a message from an unfamiliar address. "I've been watching him too. For years. I have more. W. Willie Chen." It had to be. He'd been gathering his own evidence. I forwarded the email to Detective Williams. Within hours, Elliot was back at the police station. This time, there would be no easy alibi. The evidence was too clear, too damning. The next day, the news broke. Elliot had been taken into custody and was undergoing psychiatric evaluation. His mother had been questioned about her role in covering up his behavior. The story was front-page news in our local paper, the headlines bold and dramatic. People who had dismissed me as paranoid or obsessed were suddenly apologizing. Virginia approached me at school, tears in her eyes. "I should have believed you," she said. "I'm so sorry." Her remorse seemed genuine, her eyes red from crying. Even Mr. Sanchez called me to his office to formally apologize for doubting me. "You showed remarkable courage," he said. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." The admission clearly cost him some pride, but his expression was sincere. It felt surreal. After months of fear and frustration, of being dismissed and disbelieved, the truth was finally coming out. The relief was overwhelming, but so was the exhaustion. I hadn't realized how much energy it had taken to live in constant fear, to always be looking over my shoulder. A week later, Detective Williams visited us at my aunt's house, where we were still staying while our home was repaired. He sat at the kitchen table, accepting a cup of coffee from my aunt with a grateful nod. "The psychiatric evaluation is complete," he told us. "Elliot has been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder with psychopathic traits. He'll be placed in a secure treatment facility for juveniles with severe behavioral disorders. It's unlikely he'll be released before adulthood." His tone was professional, but there was relief there too. Relief that a dangerous individual was being contained. Relief washed over me. Elliot would be contained. He couldn't hurt anyone else. "What about his mother?" my mom asked. She sat across from the detective, her hands wrapped around her own coffee mug. "She's facing charges for obstruction of justice and child endangerment. She knew about his behavior and covered it up, putting others at risk." He shook his head, clearly troubled by the whole situation. It was over, really over. That night, I sat down at my computer and deleted all the files I'd collected on Elliot. The screenshots, the saved emails, the scanned letters. I didn't need them anymore. The digital record of months of fear and anxiety disappeared with a few clicks. Then I went to the blog. It had served its purpose, bringing together Elliot's victims, creating a record that couldn't be ignored. But keeping it up felt wrong somehow. like giving Elliot the attention he craved. So I deleted that too. The website disappeared from the internet, though its impact remained. As I closed my laptop, I felt lighter. For the first time in months, I didn't have to look over my shoulder. I didn't have to worry about what Elliot might do next. He was gone, and I could finally start to heal. The night was quiet, peaceful. Through the window, I could see stars in the clear sky. Tomorrow would be a new day, the first of many without the shadow of Elliot hanging over me. I was ready to move forward, to reclaim my life. The nightmare was over.